Hello, once again I'm going to briefly check some Linux distros. What I'm currently on is Debian, mostly with the KDE Plasma desktop environment. Setting it up might not be the easiest, but it was still really manageable for me. It's supposed to be really stable and meant for servers, but the older packages might not be the best for home users, as they are often not updated and will get outdated. I'm thus planning on trying OpenSUSE. It's kinda stable, but also gets updated packages. In this video I'll try to review 3 distributions. None of them seem like something I'm excited to use daily, but I'll take a quick look. Again, the disk files for installation can be downloaded from the distribution's official website. MX Linux is a distro I haven't seen people really talking about, but it is the most popular on DistroWatch, which seems kinda paradoxical for me. It has a page dedicated to computers pre-installed with it, but there indeed is a download button to download the system. It comes with 3 desktops, XFCE, KDE Plasma and Fluxbox Window Manager. I'll check out XFCE. It seems like a respectable environment and I haven't really tried it. I'm currently not really at the level of playing basic window managers. There are also different editions for different processor architectures. If you are using a Windows computer, it's very likely x86. The file is hosted externally on SourceForge Cloud. Next is Manjaro. That's already a pretty nice looking site. It prompts you to select the architecture at the start. Of the graphical interfaces, KDE Plasma, GNOME and XFCE are officially supported, but some community-run editions are additionally available. I'll take both KDE and GNOME. Cutefish is something I mentioned that looks like Mac OS and even looks good, unlike Elementary. It is a beautiful distribution, but still in its beta stage. That becomes immediately clear from one of its 2 websites, as no buttons work. They just don't do anything when clicked. Not even the download button. You still get it advertising itself. Oh, is this finally a button I can click? Oh. Fortunately, there is a named GitHub page for it with a download. As of writing, the latest release is based on Ubuntu LTS 22.04. However, I had recently downloaded the previous release based on Debian 12. I couldn't hold myself and briefly booted into each distro in the video. I'll still give you my first impressions. I'm not gonna bother actually installing them on my computer. I'm not going to replace an existing installation. So what I will do is I'll install them on a virtual machine to check the programs, but all of them have an option to try them without installing, so I can maybe check the performance there. For the virtual machines, Debian by default does not support VirtualBox. It is possible to install for sure, but I went ahead with GNOME boxes. Yeah, I am running a GNOME app on KDE. I like how on light mode the dock completely blends in with the box's background. Let's start with MX Linux. Already we get this welcome screen. Default user passwords, very important indeed. This is MX Linux 23.1 based on Debian 12 using XFCE 4.18 desktop. I got to use an older version of XFCE some time ago while it was available at some lectures. So I can just launch the installer from here. It actually starts by making sure everything is alright with the installer. Firstly, I can change the keyboard layout. As I have mentioned, I'm going to change it to our local layout as we have some punctuation moved around and special letters. Who uses Dvorak layout is completely different. I will remove the default one so it won't switch between them. Then there is the partitioning. Oh, and the installation instructions are displayed on the left. Oh, and if you want to have your personal files separately from the system files on another partition, you change the sizes with this slider. What I found interesting about this installer is that it already starts installing while you're still setting up the user account. It saves time, so can't complain. Again, networking settings that threw me off a little bit. I'll just change the computer name. Next is the localization settings, including the time zone. There are some program settings, but it's more complicated and most users apparently should just stick to the defaults. Now just set up the username and password. I have talked before about how you asking for root and user password separately might be confusing, but here I think it's quite well explained and more intuitive. You may leave the root password blank. In this case, the user account can have administrator rights. Now just a few tips while it finishes up. You may continue using the live boot or restart to launch the real MX Linux. A customized grab screen, I think. MX Linux also has its loading animation, pretty basic login screen, but what more do you expect? It is installed. What should I even review now? The same welcome screen appears when first opened. There are two workspaces by default. Switching between them is instantaneous. XFCE is a lightweight and stable desktop. I suppose it can't afford a lot of graphical effects and animations. Let's take a look at the panel. On the system tray there's essentials like battery and internet, but also clipboard history and package manager. Something peculiar I noticed is that the application launcher is placed next to the system tray and the shutdown next to the applications. Their placement seems switched up compared to how they usually are, but that's just MX Linux's placement. The launcher seems pretty alright though. I heard XFCE is pretty customizable, so I'll check the panel configuration in a moment. The application launcher has a shortcut to open the settings. I try to find the display settings and to get a widescreen display. The clock on the desktop immediately caught my attention. It's a nice touch, but it seems like changing the display size misplaced it. There's MX Tweak, that is, I don't know, a bunch of these settings packed together for MX, I guess. Let's take a look at the panel settings. I can change the size and the amount of rows. Something Linux Mint with Cinnamon cannot do is change the length of the panel. Over there it just takes up the whole edge. I think this changes the minimum length here. Here I can reorder the elements and configure them. I just now noticed that most of the default elements are marked as external. Have they been added there by MX and by default are not available? Of course, I can add elements to the panel from a list and remove them. The panel can be horizontal, completely vertical, or in a column. You can uncheck Lock the taskbar to move the panel around. It seems like it can even be in the middle of the desktop. I suppose that's how you make a dock in XFCE. Let's just bring the launcher to the top next to the applications. I don't know, having application launcher next to the open applications just feels right to me. MX Linux just has its own defaults that can be modified. I can respect that. XFCE doesn't seem to have an app store like GNOME, KDE or the Linux Mint. There is this Synaptic Manager though. It's not as intuitive as it just lists all available packages. Debian has old programs. MX Linux says to update some programs as the default edition of Firefox web browser is included, not some extended support release. Also the top bar is just black. The terminal, I like it being transparent. Package updates by terminal are held back by Synaptic. Let's go back to it then. I have to manually refresh the package list to get it fully. The list is a bit messy, but at least there are categories. In the launcher there is a terminal and XFCE terminal, both open the exact same thing. Duplicate entries, The classic NeoFetch is pre-installed, but I have already talked about the versions. XFCE 4.18, the current one, came out a year ago, with XFCE 4 series starting all the way back in 2003. It appears what I got to use previously might have been 4.12 or something. Yeah, it was on some older release of Debian. When shutting down, the opening animation is played in reverse. Only after restarting did it let me know there are updates available. This is done through Synaptic, I guess. Before I could not use apt. It was actually because I had Synaptic running on in the background. Let's take a look at the themes now. There is this conky manager I didn't quite get the hang of, but in the settings under the appearance tab I can switch between built-in themes. Arc Dark is dark, but Arc Darker is half dark, half light. Where is the logic in that? The default actually seems good enough, so, or maybe it's dark variant. I can also change the icons and fonts over there, but I think I just go with the defaults as well. Turns out key is just the desktop clock. In the launcher settings I can change its transparency. Changing the background opacity seems to be a theme in XFCE. Let's go back to Synaptic. I know I keep jumping on and off from it. It is going to take me a bit to get used to. The plain list has all the packages. That includes extensions and dependencies. So you may have to do a little bit of digging to find the actual product. But when you do, you can tick what you want to install and click apply. MX uses X server and Pulse audio to record. While Flatpak is supported, the FlatHub repository has not been set up and I didn't see a connection to it in the package managers. So I guess I'll have to manually install them if I want updated versions. I added the repository and then install from there. MXLux has a built-in tool to install local Debian packages. One small thing I found amusing is at least it has an IDE for coding called Genie, but it couldn't run Python by itself, because in Debian you're supposed to use Python 3, not Python. In the terminal, the programs and commands may have a few different ways to be written out, and it can be a bit of a mess. MXLux has some tools included, like here in MX Package Manager, which doesn't feel much different to Synaptic. Kden Live comes packaged with version 22.12, but the Flatpak version is 23.8. For something like a video editor, I'd recommend getting the latest version. I remember recently downloading a distro specific release and it was missing plenty of effects. So again, there are a bunch of tools categorized as MX tools. The one that probably stands out the most is MX Tweak. The suite seems helpful for managing the system, but the settings are scattered across so many programs, cluttering the start menu. I do feel like some of them should be unified in the settings. Under MX Tweak there are also more of these transparent settings, like the top bar, interactive windows and the drop-down lists, you know. I'll switch over to the live mode for a moment. It's always a good time logging into a Wi-Fi network there. Now what external tools can I test? I guess I can try receiving by Bluetooth and connecting the external microphone on my headset. Bluetooth has a tray icon you can right click to see the settings, like file sending. Clicking on the icon opens this window showing connected devices. Here accept incoming file and now it will be brought here. So now where are the sound settings? Oh, and I can swipe the desktop and switch workspaces or swipe on an app to move its contents. By going on the sound settings, then audio mixer, then input devices, I can switch between built-in and external microphone. MX Linux seems like something I could use if I wanted a more lightweight distribution. It is probably easier than like Debian XFCE it is based on. It is fairly customizable for a more bare desktop. While GNOME is really minimal, XFCE is just old-fashioned. You know, the Windows start menu of the 90s, kind of that feeling I'm getting. Yeah, it's a bit better than that though. I know Linux Mint, one of the most recommended distros, comes with both Cinnamon and XFCE. The areas where Cinnamon is better are accent colors and maybe better system tools. XFCE for me excels at customization and the general design. Manjaro KDE. For some reason I couldn't initially manage to run it in a VM. It would get stuck at some command line. I seemingly got it working when I took the file from my USB again, so maybe it was improperly copied over. It's odd that this happened. So that's why I started with Manjaro GNOME. It launched it with its very own boot screen. There is the option to boot with open source or NVIDIA drivers. So Manjaro is based on Arch Linux, by the way, a professional system that gets all the very latest packages and where the user is supposed to manage everything. There is none of this hand-holding and doing things for you, but you get to be in charge. It sparked definitely the biggest Linux meme about people feeling supreme for using a hard distro where they are in charge. While Manjaro is based on this really advanced distribution, it tries to be easier. I have heard some criticism over it for not being managed well. Apparently there was a thing with certificates expiring and it's still rather easy to break the system. For the installation, Manjaro uses themed calamaris to install the system. If I would do this on real hardware, Calamaris installer has a nice feature where I can replace an existing partition with the installation. Again, it offers another password for the root, but it can be skipped intuitively and the difference is clear, just like in MX. What was interesting for me with Manjaro installer is that there was a whole section for choosing the Office suite, like the editor for documents, presentations and like that. I have personally used LibreOffice. I now have it installed. You know what that means? I can now go to forums and brag about using the professional distro. Manjaro is based on Arch, by the way. What surprised me was that Manjaro comes with its own theme for GNOME, the minimalist desktop. The buttons are this shade of green instead of the normal blue. It comes with Dash to Dock extension pre-installed, which brings Proj with the apps onto the desktop, so it's always accessible. On the dock, a software management app is neatly already put there. It appears that there are some updates, so let's update. I just reinstalled the installation image before installing to have the new GNOME 45 desktop by default. I can quickly jump over to the live boot to showcase the new visual changes in GNOME 45. On the top left corner, the Activities button has changed into a display that shows the available workspaces and which one of them you're currently on. If your keyboard supports lighting, you can now change the intensity of the lights from the keyboard quick setting on the top right menu. The look of the apps has been changed as well. Let me show you. Alright, Manjaro has its own look. But if you notice, the top bar now blends into the actual content, meaning it isn't visually separated anymore. Here's how it looks with the default theme, captured in the live boot of Fedora 39. I do think it looks nice. Of course, you can still click on the activity dots to go to the activities view. By using more workspaces, the display in the corner updates by adding new dots symbolizing the new workspaces. For Bluetooth, I can just go to the Bluetooth quick settings. This seems a bit misplaced. It is now receiving the file. The only indication is the device is being connected, but it's fine, I got it. I can easily switch between microphones on the sound tab of the settings. There is a small green bar on the right showing the volume of the input. I now got Manjaro KDE working as well by copying the file to my laptop again and whoa, is that a custom plasma rolling screen? Nice! That actually impressed me. They take the desktop environments and add their own style on top. I do appreciate it and I think it looks really pleasant. Manjaro KDE has its own theme called Breath, and it has both a light and dark mode. The wallpaper is impressive, especially on dark mode where it's like dark but there's still plenty of glow. One small thing though about the themes. Breath and Breath Light look exactly the same. Is it just not updating because of VM or are there duplicate themes? The Breath theme turns and highlights the Manjaro tint of green. It kinda reminds me of the OpenSUSE theme, as both were like white and minty. I think SUSE used the green more. I remember the top bar being colored as well. There is an oxygen window edge that makes it glow blue. What the? How haven't I seen it before? Also, okay, maybe the display is stuttering a little bit on the virtual machine. By enabling the Breath dark color scheme, the wallpaper also automatically changes to the dark variant. Oxygen theme, I wonder if that's the old KDE Plasma theme or something. All this talk about the visuals while I haven't even started installing it. So let's do it now. Uranus. And like that, I have successfully installed Uranus. As I haven't reinstalled the installer from the KDE edition, there are now over 400 updates. I'm already getting warnings about, oh, but the updates are going to break things. Lovely. The update, however, went smoothly and now I just have to restart Uranus. Well, don't mind if I do. Manjaro's package manager has the programs listed to categories, so it would be easier to find the type of program you're looking for. It is easier than Synaptic as it just lists the programs themselves, and there's more info about them, and well, icons too. Just click install and apply to install a program. There is support for FlatHub and AUR, which is a huge repository of Arch packages. Hold on, installed Orphans? But in AUR, you don't install packages. Packages install, I mean you have to build the packages. Now where's my engineering toolkit? I have to start building. Did the software manager just crash on me? Well, there goes my desktop. It's always a good time when trying to install a program crashes the entire desktop environment. Speaking of the environment, I went to check and wait, what? Plasma version 5.27.10? There's a 0.10 already? The kernel version is 6.5.13. While it's fairly new, I heard we got kernel version 666 recently. The package manager now just refuses to install the AUR package that previously failed. On Arch-based distros, installing using the terminal is using the pacman command. Okay, let's open up pacman. Oh, I failed it. Okay, but updating actually is done using sudo pacman -su. There is nothing to do. Nice. For installing packages, you can use just -s, but -su is recommended to update the system before installing. There are a lot of categories in the software manager, actually. I can recognize some desktop environments, even newer ones like Cutefish. Despite being an updated distro, it uses pulse audio for sound input, though pipe wireless to be set up. Oh cool, I can just record my desktop wallpaper like that. Oh, and I keep misspelling pacman. The terminal though looks a bit more colorful than usually. Is it this ZSH? When browsing the AUR packages, all the dependencies and add-ons get mixed in as well, so it might again be a bit of a chore to find the actual program. Can you just start installing, please? Oh. Wait, did it fail to install? Do not install? What? Flatpak fortunately works as expected, just as always. I like how on the welcome screen it promotes Manjaro's YouTube channel, but links to Telegram instead. Just quickly trying that the window snapping works. On the welcome screen I also get Synaptic Style Manager. Taking another look at the themes. The loading screen has a dark mode that I also can preview. Back to this dark oxygen look. I gave the AUR another shot and the manager crashed again. And the desktop. Manjaro, I love what they're doing with the visuals. They customized the desktop so it's still recognizable it's the same GNOME or Plasma, but they added their own theme and made it beautiful. They also added a dock in GNOME to make it easier to use. I appreciate the look and feel. It is a rolling release though, so might not be the most stable. The default repository seems a bit limited and the Arch repository that supposedly has it all just didn't work. Arch is something I wouldn't go near right now, so the issues may be a cause of my ignorance of not getting familiar with Arch packaging. Anyways, I couldn't do anything with the Arch packages. Next one is CutefishOS, and it clearly is intended to look like a Mac. It also uses the Calamaris installer that opens automatically. There's not really anything to talk about the installer anymore. So a Cutefish splash screen. Since the project is still in development, it will be unfinished and there will be things wrong with it. So at first it opens up a full screen setup. It just asks me whether I want a light or dark theme. That's all it does. When it opens up a full screen tool to finish the installation, I kinda would have expected something more. That's not a big deal yet. Here is Cutefish in a live boot. There is a top panel, on the left of it there is the name of the currently focused application and even a global app menu if it supports it. Pushing the mouse in the corner gives an overview of opened applications. You may cancel it or choose one to put it in focus. On the right of the panel there is a system tray and the quick settings. Though it is really basic, it only lets you turn them on or off, and Bluetooth just completely disappears without turning it off. If you want to configure the options in any way, you have to open the settings app. Fortunately, there is this button that takes you there. Clicking on the clock opens Notification Center. If you get any notifications, they will be listed here. Down here is docked with pinned running applications. The leftmost item is a full screen launcher where you can access all apps. The screenshotting tool is also neatly included on it by default. I can see Cutefish supports desktop icons, though they are not very commonly used on Linux. The screenshot messages now also appear in the notification center. I tried turning Bluetooth on and the settings crashed. It's turned on, but there is nothing. Okay then. I can change microphone volume, but not the input device. Why is that? Wait, the launcher text is glitched out. I haven't even done anything and the desktop is already bugging. Let's just open the settings. Since I installed the distro while away on a trip, it is in a language I don't really understand, even though I switched the language in the installer. So let's make it English through the settings. You have to log out for the changes to take effect. There is support for some languages, but the list isn't that extensive yet. So at startup there is a Debian terminal style menu. The default applications have not been set up, even though there currently is just one app for each task. Let's look at the appearance. There are a number of colorful abstract wallpapers that look pleasant. You can have the background be just one color, but that's not as exciting. On the display you can only set the scaling of the graphics, nothing about the screen resolution. Cutefish is currently version 0.8, so yes, there is no stable release yet. The About page has a nice shortcut to update the software. I like how it calls me a Unix user while asking for a password. Is it even doing anything? It takes a while to display anything at all, but the updates went without problems overall. Restarting after an update is well recommended. There is a power saver and performance mode with no balanced mode. Well, at least there are these two modes for power usage. The appearance tab has a setting for the theme, dimming the background on dark theme and the system effects. The last one is really vague. I have no idea what this turns on. Oh, and accent colors. The terminal has a transparency and blur setting. Now that's transparent. Unfortunately, I didn't see a way to make any of the other system apps transparent for the settings or even customize the appearance. Since it's based on Debian, of course it uses Debian packages and installs using apt. All apps can be found in the full screen launcher. Archive Manager, is this for extracting zips or something? Oh, there's this global menu displayed next to the app name. It doesn't seem to support a lot of apps, archives and files being the first ones. Though I changed the language, the lock screen and the folder names remain in Portuguese. Without the blur and opacity, the terminal has this nice glass effect. The Debian edition of Cutefish actually comes with Chromium as the default web browser, instead of Firefox that generally is pre-installed on Linux systems. Also, since it's Debian, I have to install the extended support release, which basically is a slightly older version that only gets security fixes. There is a Debian package installer, but it only works with the local ones that have been manually downloaded. Chromium actually has a menu on the top. Nice. The design of Chromium really gives off Google Chrome vibes, but of course it does. I'm not signed in Chromium. Signed in to where? Google? I can send apps from the launcher to the dock and move them around. KDE system settings. Can I finally change the screen resolution? And there we go, this already looks better. Compositor effects. I don't know, apply them or something. I just broke the entire display, how nice. As soon as I try to customize it, everything falls apart. There is a program called Software and Updates, but it's only about the repositories. Stacer, that is a system monitor, I think. Oh, there is a system tray for apps. And there is Synaptic, the low-level package manager. Firefox looks pretty ugly on Cutefish. The corners are all messed up. So again, it uses pulse audio and Xr to capture. And there is the menu up there. My opinion about the global menu has improved, at least that. I thought it only worked with just a few pre-installed apps. I restarted Cutefish and now it's back to its default square look. I guess Plasma settings don't really affect it after all. CutefishOS is a great looking desktop. Okay, it is just unfinished. While it looks inviting, there is practically no customization available and there are bugs and imperfections all over the place. The default applications can also do very little. I know the edition of it that I used isn't the latest today, as there is one based on Ubuntu 22. Yes, it is in beta and hasn't had a full stable release yet, so maybe I was a bit harsh and maybe I tried it too early. I won't recommend against using it on your main system, but I'm excited to see how it turns out in the future. None of the distros I took a look at seem like something I'd mainly use, but I guess they have a purpose. MX seems like an alright option that's less resource heavy, and Cutefish might be a viable option when it gets finished, if it ever gets done. Again, I'm thinking of using OpenSUSE Tumbleweed, as it seems to have a balance between updated software and stability, but I also like Debian, Ubuntu and its derivatives for the app support. I also wonder whether I should use GNOME or KDE, the two most popular desktop environments. GNOME is prettier and smoother, but it's really minimalistic. I'm not a fan about how third-party extensions have to be downloaded to customize it. KDE has a lot of customization options, but it also clutters the settings and it's not as straightforward. With adding all these options, the team maybe cannot pay as much attention to the design. I'm not saying it looks bad, it looks alright, but it's like more blocky compared to GNOME. Still, I may be steering a bit towards using KDE Plasma. I think I'm going to take a break from this distro reviews, as I feel like I have covered what I wanted to, and the distros don't seem all that different. Well, some are maybe updated more, some are more stable, some customize the desktop. It mainly comes down to this. A lot of distributions are based on another one, but perhaps they include another desktop environment with their own tools. Of the 12 distributions I have talked about, only 3 were not part of the Debian 3. Imagine that. Sure, there are some niche distributions with their own qualities and that's great, but inexperienced users maybe should go with something mainstream. It is possible that this concludes this little series, so I guess goodbye for now.